Hello, how are you guys? I am
Gals.
Paloma and gals. I am Paloma
I'm Renee.
and we are a Rocky Yoga Retreat and we are so excited to be in the group again. We've taken breaks, we've been in and out, but just want to tell you that we're so excited to be here. Today we are actually talking about something really interesting because it's top of mind for us. So we're talking about the stories we tell ourselves in yoga, in life, and in business, right? The things we tell ourselves that we can and cannot do, that we're good at and that we're not, that we like and that we don't. So this comes about just because Renee and I were just recently talking a lot about this subject because we have been having to move through a lot of these stories ourselves. We are moving through this very technical, techie phase of our course creation, and so we're constantly being challenged to learn new platforms, to create things and do things we've never thought we would actually.
Lean into discomfort.
Right.
I mean, both of us, I think when we first started out doing stuff online, we thought, oh, we're not techie people. We're not that. We kind of had this hat or, identity that we weren't techie people. And you don't have to be a quote unquote techie person to be empowered to learn how to have certain skills that will be helpful in the modern world.
And I think nobody is born techie, right? And it's so funny that we say that even you're techie, you're not, where it's more about people liking it more than others, right? But we all can learn it. We all can learn a certain level that we can be comfortable with. So, for example, with us, it has been a lot of editing videos and recording, figuring out how the sound needs to go and the size of our slides, and because we're moving
images,
because we're doing these modules, right? And so there's so many moving parts in an online teacher training and online course, which is what we're working on and soon to come. But so many times when when we are faced by a new thing that we have this story about that we think we can't do or we don't like, or we makes us feel anxious and makes us feel like when you just don't feel good about it. What we've noticed is that, and we're supporting each other in this, and I hope you have someone that you can kind of talk to about this as well at home, a partner or someone. We are telling each other, it's okay. Remember that time when you thought you couldn't do this. So reminding each other constantly that we've conquered some shit. We have.
What you say on Facebook?
It's okay to say on Facebook. I think that it's important to know that those stories can be squashed. Those stories can be rewritten. And
we know this from teaching yoga, from being yogis and what we learn on the mat. I mean, going through the process of becoming a yoga teacher, I'm sure many of you, myself included, go through all of this fear and doubt of, oh my gosh, am I good enough? Or wanting to lead a retreat, and the first time you do it, like, oh my gosh, am I good enough? Are people going to want to come? And having desires to do things, but being limited by our own stories that we ultimately have to lean into and transform. And we teach that to our students. We teach our yoga students to lean into discomfort, to recognize their fears, and not just muscle their way to push through them, but get curious, get comfortable. How can you make friends with this fear and ultimately transform and move through it?
And I think there's a step-by-step process with anything. And if you're willing to embrace that process in each step of the way, that you are going to feel more comfortable. You're not going to teach a student to bust into headstand the first time they walk into class. It's the same thing with the things that we are faced in, for example, our yoga businesses, where we're learning new processes and new systems or new platforms or new techie stuff. It's gonna take some time, and it's okay. And
beginner's mind is a really beautiful thing.
And I love the curious too. Like, I think that if we can face our stories, the stories we have told ourselves of things we can and cannot do, with curiosity,
and recognizing that they are stories, because I think a lot of times we have this sense of self that, oh, I'm good at this or I'm not good at that, and we're so we need somebody else to sometimes even point out that those are actually stories, that they limit us, that it doesn't have to be our truth. So recognizing the stories that you may or may not have is the first step.
I love that. I was actually listening to a podcast with Amy Apolati today at the Yoga Land, in the Yoga Land podcast, and she was talking about how she often refers to shine your light like a toddler or something like that. And it really means, and I think that's for those of you guys that have kids or nieces or nephews, it really, really resonates, because we know that, and you, Renee, you have a toddler, they are so they're not afraid of trying, right? They may fall 100 times trying to walk, but they're not afraid of it. They stand up and they do it anyways. And so if we can remember how it felt to be that curious, because we want to conquer the world, because we want to, we're so excited about everything that toddlers don't have that story written. They're not interested in that story. They are interested in what they can do and how to move forward. And I feel like it's a great analogy to kind of face things sometimes when we feel like,
We often hear, I often say to my students that yoga is a practice of remembering. And so going back to, our true essence from when we're born open, we're born curious, we're born with, not all of these inhibitions. And so how can we remember that?
How can we remember?
Go back to that.
So if you have any stories that you're telling yourself right now about things that you can't do or that you don't like, or you're feeling anxious about something that you need to face in your yoga business, in your yoga teaching, or even in your life, remember that these are just stories, and how can you rewrite those stories for yourself, or how can you move through them in order to see if that story really is true or not, right?
Or envision something different.
Yeah.
So, and Paloma had mentioned before about having a plan and working through things in step-by-step process. We don't become an expert in something overnight. And I think that's a really important thing to remember is take time to make a plan. If you're going to learn something that's totally brand new to you and it seems overwhelming, take time to make a plan of how you're going to learn that. Maybe map it out on your calendar so that you can.
It's actionable.
It's actionable, and there's bite-sized chunks that you can digest and not expect yourself to learn everything overnight. And so if you haven't already, many of you already know this, but we have a great 60-day yoga retreat planner, and it guides you through the step-by-step process of the action steps you need to take over 60 days to get your retreat planned, not to actually lead your retreat, but just do the planning process, which it can be a lot of times so overwhelming.
So much time.
Well, having the plan can be super helpful. So if you haven't already, you can check it out in the link below. And
and we're super excited about all you newbies in the group. Say hi if you can, pop in with a comment, and yes, download the planner if that's what you're interested in, and we would love to hear your feedback. And if you have a story you want to share, you can always pop it in the comments below. We would love to hear it. Have a great day.
Bye.